Okay, fam, welcome back. So today we're going to be going over Bitcoin and how it looks like it's getting ready to moonshot. So with that being said, let's get it. All right, so I'm going to go over the major indicators first, then we're going to talk about Bitcoin and the 65,000 level that it does look like it's about ready to smash. So let's go over these other major Bitcoin and crypto metrics first. So the thing I will say about crypto here is, or the search term for the last 5 years on Google is basically the gist of it is this. Okay, when this thing is at all-time lows, retail's not in the space. Okay, there's no FOMO, there's no hype train, there's no oh god, everybody and the brothers talking about crypto now. Okay, usually when we get to that point, where everybody and the brother, including celebrities, talking about crypto, that usually indicates potentially could indicate that we're nearing a top. Um, Again, there's not really much going on here. Okay, I'll tell you guys like I told you before. We're basically just sitting at the lows here. So we were literally at these lows last September before the crypto spot or Bitcoin spot ETF got approved. And again, we were also in these lows kind of around the time of the bear market. So you can see we're at a 13 back then, we're at a 13 now. So pretty much this tells me we're still early. There is still time to accumulate, and retail has still not come into the space for the most part. Okay, so Bitcoin, very similar thing here. Bitcoin only currently sitting at an 18. When Bitcoin went to 75,000, it was at a 54. So that should tell you guys the kind of peak FOMO and people want to, look up, oh, what's Bitcoin doing now? I heard Bitcoin's going to 75,000. And, the friends calling them up, bro, Bitcoin's at $200,000. Like we should buy right now. That's usually what happens behind the scenes when you see something like this. So it's at an 18 right now. Again, before the spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved, this thing was sitting just slightly below where we are currently. And then again, at the bear market lows, it was kind of sitting pretty much right around the level we're at now, which, to be honest, on the charts, Bitcoin is kind of boring looking in this zone here. It's not really doing much. It's not exciting because it's not going to the moon. But again, that's why we go over this stuff on this channel with you, to show you what's coming next. Okay, not showing you what is, because that's what retail looks at. Okay, they look at what is. They're not looking at, oh, hey, not what's happening today, but what could happen in like a month or two, right? So that's what we're looking at. We're looking out in time. We're not looking at today. Retail, they only look at today. That's what they care about. Bitcoin's at 60,000. Oh, it could go to 100,000. They're going to buy in today, right? Even if Bitcoin just did like 150% gain in the last 3 months, they don't care about stuff like that. Okay, they're very short-term mindset. They think about one day or 1 hour in the future. They're not caring about what Bitcoin's going to do 2 months from now, or whether it's expensive or cheap. They don't care about stuff like that. Okay, so once again, we're very early in the space, in my opinion. There's lots of time still to accumulate. In my opinion, that window's closing. You might have another month or two, maybe, to get Bitcoin below all-time highs, and maybe another 3 or 4 months to get altcoins at some of these cheap prices and the grayscale trusts. I think that's probably about as much time as you're going to have before these things eventually are ripping to the moon. And all of these may even still be at higher prices even then. They just may not be at all-time highs yet, but they might be higher than where they are now. So very early in the space, not a lot of retail interest here. This is basically a retail chart. Okay, there's not a lot of interest. Institutions and whales are likely secretly buying without telling people. Again, you would know that they were buying if you look this kind of stuff up. I will go over some of the Bitcoin ETF inflows and outflows with you guys in the next video, just to kind of show you guys what these people are doing behind the scenes while nobody else is looking at Bitcoin. They're looking at Bitcoin and they're buying, millions, if not billions of dollars worth. That's just kind of how the whales operate. So when nobody else is interested and it's boring or it's cheap, and all the retail has gotten smashed into the ground by 80%, then the whales want to come in and buy the dip. That's usually how it goes. So that covers that. Okay, so crypto fear and greed. So we're sitting in the middle of fear and greed. Usually when this thing is on one extreme or the other, it swings in the opposite direction. Okay, so when we're in the greed, it can swing to fear, and it can be in one of these areas for a very long time, just so y'all know. And when we're in fear, eventually we do end up swinging back to greed. So we're kind of in the middle right now. What I think this means is I think that we're in the middle and we're about ready to swing over into the green territory. I think that likely Bitcoin is going up over the next 3 to 6 months, and all coins are going to go up with it. So, and then maybe we have some kind of mid-cycle peak in April, May of next year, like last cycle, and then, we have another second swing to the upside towards probably October, November, December, and then the top is in sometime at the end of next year. Okay, so you guys can see this thing. So Bitcoin itself and crypto did spend quite a bit of time down here at these lows, kind of between June and August, September timeframe. Again, that's pretty much reminiscent of last year. That's also reminiscent of 2021, and I'll show you guys that on Bitcoin right now, as a matter of fact. So basically, between June and okay, so you guys can see between March and September of this year. So we got to go back to 2023. So what did it do between May, June to September? Not really much. Okay, it pretty much did the exact same thing last year that it's doing this year, except this time it's in a bullish falling channel instead of a sideways channel. And then if I go back to 2022, kind of same thing, same time frame. Okay, roughly about June. Except this went out to January of 2023, but that's to be expected because, again, after the third green year, usually the bear market year ends kind of towards the end of that fourth year, which you guys can see pretty much happened right about December of 2022. But the point is, the bearish seasonality, roughly about somewhere between June to September, did play out here. Bitcoin basically did nothing. And that's usually when retail is not in the space because they don't care and they're like, oh, well, it's not doing much of anything, so why the hell would I care? This is usually the best time to buy when fear and greed is down here in the 30s, and we've recently retraced since then. I do think that crypto is going all-time high soon. Okay, so MVRV, this thing basically just says that we're cheap versus expensive. Usually when this thing gets closer to the top here to kind of that 7 to 10 area, that's when I think we should all be a little bit terrified and be like, okay, yikes, maybe it's time to take some profit. Again, not financial advice, but you can see this thing correlates almost perfectly with Bitcoin peaks. And it has hit these kind of lighter colored boxes here every single time, with the exception of the November peak. So yeah, I mean, it basically just says, once again, we're still early. So Bitcoin rainbow chart, the basis of this pretty much is, I'm not going to go over price on this chart. I've told you guys already what I think the peak is going to be. It's going to be somewhere between probably 150 to 250K. If I had to give a more specific range, I would say 140 to 220K, somewhere in there, which is still massive. I mean, that's 220,000 is 3x the current price of Bitcoin. Again, at the bear market lows, Bitcoin was at 16,000. Okay, so 220,000 is still more than a 10x the previous low. Okay, so the gist of this is that basically, if we're anywhere in between Bitcoin is dead and still cheap, that's usually a good time to buy. Anywhere between is this a bubble and maximum territory, that's usually a good time to sell. And then hodl is, well, it's basically what it sounds like. So, yeah, so Bitcoin is dead, 0 to 45,000. You can see this is up to 60,000. It says here that even up to 80,000, this thing is still a buy. That could be true. That could absolutely be true because, again, if the peak price is 220,000 or even 140,000, this thing could double in price to get to that 140,000, even from this area. Accumulates 65,000 to 111,000, still cheap, going up to 150,000. Again, that's kind of the minimum price target that I'm looking at, is 140,000. And then you can see once we get to kind of these more scary, maybe it's time to sell levels, you get up to 290,000, going all the way up to 520,000. Again, could Bitcoin hit 520,000 by the end of next year? Sure, absolutely it could. I'm not saying it can't, but I'm just saying, based on this chart, it's still cheap to buy Bitcoin. Okay, so Nupal, the gist of this is, once it's in the capitulation area, that's the best time to buy. And once it's in the euphoria greed, that's the best time to sell. The fact that we have not gotten to this pink box yet tells me the likelihood that the top is not in yet, because we kind of got up there and then kind of cooled off a little bit. So likely, I'm suspecting a basically bullish continuation out of that bull flag. So that pretty much tells me that. I mean, based on this chart, I'd say crypto's at fair value, not cheap, but not expensive. But again, we're going into bullish seasonality, and this is the end of the halving year when typically Bitcoin goes to all-time highs. So I believe this chart is going to go up in the coming months. Okay, Pi cycle top indicator. So we have gotten back above this yellow line. Again, usually when we get below it in a bull market, we do get back above it. You can see it here. You can also see it here. Well, you could say, well, 2020 was a recession and a pandemic. Yes, that's true, but that was also a black swan event. Okay, it only lasted 2 months. The real true bear market was basically back here in 2019. You can see this is a higher low. Okay, so it's not the true bear market low. Bear market is back here. So higher low, and then we got back above the yellow line and boom, ripped off to the moon. Same thing back here, higher low, ripped off to the moon, got back above the yellow line. Kind of got these series of higher lows going all the way up to these peaks. We touched the yellow line here, went up, got below it, went up. We even got below the green line here and the yellow line in 2013 and then still went higher. So you guys can kind of get the gist here. So the idea here is that once we get above the green line, that's when the bull market, is going on its final leg, and we're eventually going to see the top. Okay, every single time it happens, you guys can literally see this on the charts. The red dotted lines indicates when the top is actually in. So you can see it gets above the green line before the top is actually in. So that indicates that we're neither are we at the top, nor have we begun the parabolic phase of the bull run just yet. Okay. All right. So as of right now, see if I can get as close to this as possible. So September 24th, today is September 26th. So the current levels here for the yellow EMA is 61,900. Again, we're currently above that price. You can see on the left of the screen there, Bitcoin's at 64,800. And just to get above the green line by itself is 109,000. Okay. So anywhere from 140,000 to 220,000, maybe even up to 250,000, I would say is definitely a possibility. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one. And once it gets past that green line, I will be sure to be shouting from the rooftops, y'all. We're in the parabolic phase of the bull run. Get ready. Might be about ready to be time to take profits. Not financial advice, but this is it. This is the final legs. So, okay, M2 money supply. Pretty basic. What we're looking for here is the blue line and the green chart to go up. Okay, when the blue line goes up, Bitcoin goes up. When the green chart goes up, Bitcoin goes up. With the green chart, we want to see kind of higher peaks. So you got a little peak, big peak. We kind of faded a little bit, but then we got these successively bigger peaks. Back here in 2019, small peak, bigger peak, and then a huge peak. 2023, kind of slowly bigger peaks. Then we kind of faded off a little bit, kind of like in 2017, we kind of faded back a little bit and then ripped to the moon. I suspect we're seeing something similar here with the M2 global growth year over year. And again, once the blue line starts to really go parabolic here and the green mountain peak that you see here starts to really rip hard to the upside, that's usually when Bitcoin starts really smashing to the upside again. I do think we're going to see that soon. But generally speaking, as long as the graph on the green piece here, the mountain is green and going up and the blue line is going up, you can see the blue line is actually not going sideways anymore. It's starting to go parabolic. In my opinion, I think this is front running the price of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's likely going to start smashing higher soon. Because again, you can kind of see that back here, the blue line kind of went sideways and up a little bit. Bitcoin was going down, but once the blue line really started going parabolic, Bitcoin kind of lagged behind a little bit, but then eventually it caught up and started really smashing off to the moon. Okay. Same thing here. So, blue line kind of going sideways, doing nothing. Bitcoin is going up. Then it went down a little bit. Bitcoin's still going up. Bitcoin's successively starting to get much more aggressive to the upside as the blue line continues to go up. Okay, so let's talk about the actual Bitcoin chart itself. Okay. So, again, pretty basic here. If we zoom out, we're taking a look at this. We're in the Bitcoin halving year. Okay. I've showed you guys this piece before here. Whenever we get a golden cross on the MACD. You can see back here in October 2023, we get a breakout of the downtrend line on the RSI and a golden cross on the RSI. What happened with Bitcoin? It shot off to the moon. Okay, very similar thing back here in, it's hard to see exactly, but August to roughly about September, October of 2022. This doesn't actually really count because it was the bear market year, but you guys can see it was pretty close to the bottom. And then what happened after that? Bitcoin started going up. Same thing during the mid-cycle peak 2021. We got a break of the trend line on the RSI, golden cross on the MACD. What happened? Bitcoin shot up again to new all-time highs before the final peak. And even back here during 2020, same thing. We eventually got a breakout kind of June, July. And then we also, it's a little harder to see here, but there was a golden cross right back here in April 2020. We kind of went sideways a little bit, but again, eventually we did end up going higher. So pretty much these signals either indicate a breakout or a bottom in the markets. In this case, I think it's actually both. So the bottom was in September and we're about to get a breakout. Now, in terms of the patterns, so basically this is a bull flag. Okay, so you got your big, huge flag here. You got the pole, the flag, and then you have the pole. Again, if I just measure this out, it's going to be a little difficult to measure out, but if I just measure it out like this, I can actually get it. Give me a second, see if I can actually grab it. Okay, maybe I gotta zoom in to do this. No, I didn't want to do that. Okay, yeah, that was a lot more complicated than it had to be. So anyways, if I extend this flag out, you guys can see that it gives us a peak of roughly about $115,000. Again, I did want to also show you guys this. So basically showing from peak to peak, 2017, 2021. If we measure this out, let's say going to, I don't know, Bitcoin's peak might be somewhere around March or April 2025. That shows that we would hit this line at roughly about 120,000. Now, it doesn't have to stop there, but a lot of people are going to be looking at that line as well. But even still, if that's all it did, that's still a double the current price. So no matter how you want to look at this pattern, okay, it's either a descending channel, which is a bullish continuation pattern. Okay, usually when price goes up, then it kind of goes down. But at an angle like this, that's known as a either bull flag or descending channel, which is a bullish pattern, continuation pattern to the upside. So it has a very high probability of going up. And even if I were to do something like this and say, okay, this is a basically falling broadening wedge pattern here, that's also still a bullish pattern. So no matter how we want to look at this, either way, this does have a high probability of going up. All right, so I want to also show you guys the $65,000 level for Bitcoin. It has not gotten above it yet, but again, it could happen any day now. I mean, it's literally knocking on the door of breaking 65,100, which again, I really, really seriously believe this thing is about to break it because it's, I mean, guys, the candle that we're seeing currently is above these previous candle tops here. All we really need to confirm this is either a daily or a weekly above that, and it's game over. Actually, if I were even to move this yellow line here down to the weekly, you can see we're already above it, okay? So on the weekly, it would actually be 64,400 or so. All we need to do is close the week above that, and it's game over. This thing is going much higher. So if I go down to the daily time frame, you guys can see that it's actually already currently breaking out. Again, there needs to be another 3 hours above this. Once this daily candle closes, it gets actually above these candle tops here. In my opinion, that's it. Game over. It's going higher from this point. So why does this matter? Well, it's quite simple, okay? So we've had a series of basically higher highs, higher lows, okay? So this is known as a downtrend or a bear trend. But I mean, it's not really a bear trend. It's basically a bullish flag pattern, but it's a series of higher highs and higher lows, okay, within this channel, bull flag, whatever you want to call it. So what matters is once we get above this line, okay, that's what's known as a break of structure or potentially a trend change. And again, we're about to get a golden cross on the MACD here. That's usually a pretty strong indication, and a breakout of that RSI, a pretty strong indication this thing's going higher, okay? But once we get a break of this line and a confirmation close above it on the daily and the weekly, that indicates a trend change, okay? So what it could mean is you'll see something like this, okay? So basically it comes up, comes back, retests, comes up, comes back, retests, boom. That would be textbook. It doesn't have to play out like that, but you can see we have a high, a low, lower high, and then a low here, okay? But now all of a sudden this low is no longer a lower low. This is the low, okay? So now that you have your low and we broke this previous lower high, so now this is a high, okay? Now we have a higher low, higher high, higher low, higher high, and that's what's known as a reversal or a trend change, or in this case, a bull trend, okay? So that's exactly what I'm expecting here. And again, it just needs to break and close above on the daily and or the weekly. If it does both in the same week, that's fantastic. That's even better. I would say that's even more bullish. Either way, regardless of how this plays out, whether we just get a close above on the daily and not on the weekly, and maybe next week we get a close above, or we get a close above both on the daily and the weekly this week, either way, I'm expecting Bitcoin to be at all-time highs by November, December of this year. Okay, I'm just expecting it. That's what's always happened. Historically, that's what likely is going to happen. And pretty much everybody in the space knows it. The Fed, they're easing, they're printing money. We got the elections coming up. Usually Bitcoin pops off to the moon once we know who the president is going to be. In my opinion, it's going to be Trump. Okay, so let's go over a few more things real quick. All right, so next thing I want to go over here is the monthly time frame. So what would be even more bullish here, and again, I do think this is likely going to happen, is if the monthly time frame, which again we have 4 days or 5 days left in this case, if the monthly time frame closes above these candles right here at 64,500, which I do think is going to happen, then that would also be bullish on the monthly time frame. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the quarter. Not really much to look at on the quarter. I mean, that's whatever. So let's go out to the 12 months. Again, I've talked about this in plenty of videos, so you guys know. But the gist here is that basically what we're looking at, and this happens literally every 4 years. Okay, I literally cannot even make this stuff up. So with the exception of these 3 years here, okay, so you got 2011 red, 2012, 13 green. With the exception of those 3 years, this thing has repeated for years on end. Okay, so you have your bear market year, and then you have 3 green years. Okay, so bear market year, 3 green years, the second year is the halving. All right, so again, 2018 bear market year, 2019, 2021, 3 green years. Second year of that cycle was the halving. Bear market year in 2022, and then 3 green years, 1, 2. So we're in the second year. We should see a third green year. And again, I mean, this thing would only need to close above basically about 46,400 at the end of the year to still be considered bullish. I'm pretty confident it's not going down to 47,000 by the end of the year. I think Bitcoin's probably going to be at like somewhere between 75 to 90,000 by the end of the year. I think that's definitely possible and probably even likely. But the point is, we got 3 green years every 4-year cycle. Okay, 1 red year, and we're currently in the second green year. So we should ideally have another roughly about 15 months of green on Bitcoin. So next thing I want to go over here is the, let's see here, the total 3 index. So usually this is specifically for altcoins, just so you all know. So once again, the red year, bear market year, okay? In between that, 3 green years. Second year is the year of the halving. The year following the halving is usually the most bullish year for the altcoins. I am expecting something similar to happen. So you can see this year was not that big for altcoins. Next year should be an absolute just rocket show for moon bags for altcoins. because again, usually Bitcoin has to hit its all-time high by the end of the halving year, which is this year, and then altcoins pop off and explode the following year. It doesn't mean that altcoins can't go up through the end of the year. I think that altcoins will continue to go up through the end of the year, but in terms of seeing the most explosive moves, I don't think that's going to happen until next year. All right, so let's take a look at the weekly time frame here. And again, I'm pretty sure I showed you all this on X. If not, I apologize. So I'm trying to get this thing out to where y'all can actually see it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I showed you guys this on X. So basically, if you take a look at the charts here, okay, so we got a break of the downtrend line last year in September, before the spot Bitcoin ETFs got approved, a MACD golden cross and a break of the RSI downtrend with a RSI golden cross all happening at the same time. What happened? The altcoin market exploded, but not as much as I think as it could have, because again, true all season hasn't taken place yet. What are we currently seeing? A break of the downtrend line here, or in this case, a falling wedge. We're in our first week outside of it. Okay, we're about to get the MACD golden cross, and we're just now starting to get outside of this downtrend line, and we did have the RSI golden cross literally this month. So as of right now, literally we're getting ready to watch altcoins fly to the moon. And again, the all-time highs for any of these altcoins, because again, they'll top out at different times, could be any time between next month and probably like April, May, June of next year, or even as late as November of next year. It really depends on the altcoin you're in. They don't usually pop off all at the same time. Or what I mean to say is they don't usually top out all at the same time. They're kind of random and sporadic. Okay, so a couple more things here. So Bitcoin dominance, again, we want to see kind of a waterfall moment of the Bitcoin dominance falling off here. We have not seen that yet. Usually that does not happen until Bitcoin has topped out. So you can see the Bitcoin dominance kind of really ripped here and topped out December of the halving year. Usually when this thing goes up, that means Bitcoin's in the spotlight. So it really ripped and topped out in December of 2020, which again was the end of the halving year. We're in the halving year right now. Okay, so it would be December of 2024, ideally, when this would top out. And then it slowly fades. Okay, altcoins enter the spotlight roughly about Q1. And then this thing really waterfalls down in roughly about Q1 to, pretty much about Q2 of next year is when we saw the big waterfall on this move. So Q1 to Q2 of next year, I'm looking at altcoins and Ethereum exploding to the moon. So again, that was a rising broadening wedge, which is a bearish pattern. In this case, this means that basically we're looking for Bitcoin to drop and altcoins to pop off to the moon, which again, I do not think is going to happen until roughly about December of this year. And we're seeing a similar thing. So we could actually see Bitcoin top out in terms of dominance here anywhere in this box. So anywhere between 58 to 63%. I think it has a high likelihood of probably topping out roughly about 60, because again, that's when the waterfall really started last cycle, and you can kind of see these peaks here. It has been major resistance throughout time, so it's possible 60 could be the peak on this one, but we'll just have to keep you guys updated on that. So last thing I want to go over here is the ETH/Bitcoin dominance. So again, this is basically the inverse of the Bitcoin dominance chart. Okay, so when this thing goes down, Bitcoin dominance usually goes up, and when this thing goes up, Bitcoin dominance has fallen, which means likely altcoin season is at play. So when was the last time this thing basically got ready to break out? Well, January of 20, or yeah. Okay, so let me actually take a closer look at this, so I'm not, basically misinforming y'all. So roughly about August is when we saw this. July, August of the halving year last cycle is when we saw this breakout. Okay, we broke the downtrend line in March of 2020, which was right around the time of the halving, but again, this thing didn't really explode. Ethereum dominance didn't explode until roughly about as we got closer into the end of the halving year, and Q1 to Q2 of basically the post-halving year is when this thing moonshot. So I'm expecting something similar to happen this time around. Again, we did get a bounce off of oversold. The RSI looks like it might be curling up to go into another golden cross. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But again, the alt season likely is going to happen when Bitcoin dominance has a waterfall moment and this thing skyrockets to the moon. We just have not seen that yet. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed this content. Please like, comment, and subscribe.